I'm standing in a room I was never supposed to enter. And I don't mean I feel out of place kind of thing. I mean actual security guards at the door, black suits, silent earpieces, the whole deal. The kind of place where people don't just walk in unless their name's on some billionaire list I'll never see. White walls, cold museum lighting, that expensive silence where even your footsteps sound like a mistake. And right in front of me, that painting. The same one I almost threw away. They're calling it the Lost Meridian piece now. There are people behind me talking in low voices about historical relevance, undisclosed provenance, and numbers that sound fake even when they say them out loud. Tens of millions, maybe more at auction. But every time they hear them talk, I just think about one thing. I bought that thing for $5 at a garage sale because I thought it was garbage. And the craziest part? I almost didn't even stop that day. 3 months ago, my life looked nothing like this. No museums, no suits, no cameras, just me, my broken-down Civic, and a bank account that looked like a bad joke. I was one missed payment away from getting kicked out of my apartment. I was eating like once a day, max. Sometimes just gas station snacks and whatever I could pretend counted as dinner. You know that kind of broke where you start calculating if you can afford to be sick? Yeah, that level. I was flipping random junk to survive. Garage sales, thrift stores, Facebook marketplace deals, buy low, sell slightly less low, and hope it works out. That was my whole business strategy, if you could even call it that. That morning, I remember I was already tired before the day even started. My car was making this weird clicking sound every time I turned left. I was arguing with myself the whole drive, like, just go home, this is pointless. Then I saw the sign, handwritten cardboard, garage sale, everything must go. I almost kept driving. Almost. But something about the neighborhood made me stop. Not fancy, not poor, just quiet. The kind of place where people sell stuff not because they need money fast, but because they're getting rid of a life they don't want anymore. I parked, stepped out, and immediately felt like I didn't belong there. You ever get that feeling where you walk into a place and your shoes suddenly feel louder than everything else? Yeah, that. There were only a couple of tables, old kitchen stuff, some baby toys, a broken lamp, random boxes. Nothing interesting, nothing worth flipping. I was already mentally leaving. Then I saw it, leaning against a cheap plastic chair like it didn't even matter. A painting. No frame, slightly warped canvas, dust on the corners like it had been sitting in an attic for years. It showed a weird abstract skyline, buildings that didn't quite make sense, angles that felt wrong if you stared too long. At first glance, it looked like something a kid made after staying up too late with paint they weren't supposed to touch. I almost laughed. The woman running the sale noticed me looking at it. She didn't even try to hype it up, didn't say it was special, didn't say it had value. She just shrugged and said, "You can take that for $5 if you want it gone." $5. That's it. Not 500, not make me an offer, just get it out of here. I remember standing there thinking, this is stupid. Don't waste money. You need that for food. But I don't know, something about it kept pulling my eyes back. Like the longer I looked, the more it didn't feel like random paint strokes, like there was structure hidden under the chaos. I asked her who painted it. She said she didn't know, said it was left in the house by the previous owner, and they just never bothered to check. That should have been my exit moment. That should have been the part where I walked away like a normal person. Instead, I pulled out a crumpled $5 bill from my pocket and handed it over. I told myself it was just a gamble. Worst case, I lose a coffee's worth of money. I loaded it into the back of my Civic right next to some old scrap metal I was planning to resell and forgot about it before I even started the engine. I even remember thinking, yeah, that was dumb. If only I knew what I had just done. I wasn't just buying a painting. I was stepping into something that was going to flip my entire life upside down. I didn't think about that painting for days. Honestly, I barely thought about anything except surviving. That's how my life was back then, just a loop of stress, hunger, and small wins that barely covered the losses. I'd buy something for $10, flip it for $25, feel like a genius for 5 minutes, then realize I still couldn't pay rent. The painting just sat in my apartment corner like junk I forgot to deal with.
until the night, everything changed. It was around 2 a.m. I remember because I was still awake scrolling listings on my phone, trying to find anything I could flip before morning. My room was a mess. Clothes everywhere, empty energy drink cans, and that annoying flickering light that I kept saying I'd fix but never did. And then my eyes landed on it, that stupid painting. I don't even know why I stood up, I just did. I dragged it closer and actually looked at it for the first time since the garage sale. Up close, it still looked weird, ugly even, like someone tried to draw a city from memory after seeing it in a dream once. But something was off. Not in a "this looks expensive" way, more like "this looks intentional." I tilted it under the light, and that's when I noticed it. A pattern. Not obvious at first. You had to follow the lines slowly, like connecting dots that didn't want to be connected. The buildings weren't random. They formed something, almost like a map. I laughed to myself at first. "Bro, you're broke, not a detective," I said out loud, but I couldn't unsee it. The longer I stared at it, the more it felt like there was structure hidden inside the chaos, like whoever painted it didn't want people to notice too quickly. I grabbed my phone and started zooming in on photos I took earlier. That's when I saw something even stranger, tiny markings in the corners. Not paint splatter, not damage, symbols, barely visible unless you were looking for them. I tried Googling it like a normal person would. Abstract skyline painting, symbols meaning, hidden codes in art, old city painting, cipher, you name it. Nothing useful came up. At some point, I told myself I was losing it, like maybe I was just sleep-deprived and broke and my brain was inventing meaning because I wanted something to change. But I still couldn't stop looking at it. So I did something dumb. I flipped it over. The back was worse. There were faint pencil markings under the dust, not one person's handwriting, multiple layers, like different people had touched it over time, adding notes, then trying to erase them. One line caught my attention immediately. It wasn't clear, but I could make out part of it. M17, do not sell. My stomach dropped a little reading that, because now it wasn't just a weird painting anymore. It was a painting someone wanted hidden. I remember sitting on the floor staring at it for a long time, trying to convince myself it was fake, some prank, some coincidence, some overactive imagination. But then I thought about something else. Why would someone throw this into a garage sale for $5? That didn't make sense, unless they didn't know what it was, or they wanted it gone fast. I didn't sleep that night. By sunrise, I made a decision I still can't fully explain. I wasn't going to sell it, not yet. I needed to know what it actually was, and that decision was the first step into a situation I had absolutely no control over anymore.
The next morning, I did something I never usually did. I skipped trying to flip items for quick cash. Instead, I went straight to the library. Yeah, the library. Feels kind of old school, I know, but I didn't have money for anything fancy. No art experts, no appraisers, no consultants. Just me, a hoodie, and a backpack with a folded painting I probably should have left alone. The whole way there, I kept telling myself I was being ridiculous. Like, dude, it's just a random painting. You're not about to discover a lost Da Vinci or some movie-level nonsense. But I still went. Inside the library, I used one of those ancient desktop computers, the kind that takes 10 seconds to click anything and sounds like it's about to launch into orbit. I started digging. At first, I searched the symbols I saw on the back. Nothing. Then I tried the skyline style, older abstract city paintings, underground artists, forgotten European art, anything that even remotely matched. Still nothing. But then I changed my approach. Instead of looking for the painting itself, I started looking for patterns in what I saw. And that's when I found something that made my stomach tighten again. There was an obscure forum post from years ago, some art collector thread buried deep in internet history. Most of it was people arguing about authenticity of lost modernist pieces, stuff I didn't fully understand. But one comment stood out. Someone mentioned a rumored series called Meridian Works. Not famous, not documented in mainstream catalogs, more like an urban legend among collectors. According to the Post, these pieces were created by a reclusive artist who allegedly embedded coded layouts of real-world locations inside abstract cityscapes. Most experts called it nonsense, a myth, a conspiracy theory for rich art nerds. But there was one line that stuck with me. If a Meridian piece resurfaces, it won't look valuable at first. That's the point. I just sat there staring at the screen for a while, because suddenly my $5 junk painting didn't feel like junk anymore. It felt intentional, like someone designed it to be ignored. I rushed back home. When I got there, I laid the painting flat on the floor and started studying it again, this time with a different mindset. Not what is this, but what am I missing? That's when I noticed the skyline wasn't just random shapes. It wasn't even one city. It was layered, like multiple city grids overlapping in impossible ways. Streets that didn't align unless you rotated the canvas slightly. Buildings that formed repeating angles viewed from different positions. I grabbed a ruler, started tracing lines on paper, trying to map it out like a puzzle. Hours passed. At some point, I stopped feeling like I was guessing and started feeling like I was decoding something. Then I saw it, a pattern forming in the intersections of the lines. Not words, coordinates. My heart actually sped up. I wrote them down carefully, double-checking every angle, every line. I didn't want to believe it, but it kept matching. There were at least 3 sets, real geographic coordinates. I remember laughing nervously because it felt insane, like something out of a movie where the broke guy accidentally stumbles into a hidden treasure map. But then my phone buzzed, a notification from my phone map app. Out of curiosity, I typed in the first coordinate, and it didn't just show a location. It showed a place that was less than an hour away from me, a restricted old industrial building that I had driven past before without ever thinking twice. That's when everything in my head changed. Because now, this wasn't about art anymore. It was about where this thing was pointing me. And I had no idea what I was about to walk into.
I should have stopped. Like, actually stopped. Any normal person would have looked at what I found, laughed nervously, and shoved the painting back into a corner like, yeah, this is getting too weird for me. But I didn't. Because by that point, I wasn't thinking clearly anymore. I was thinking about rent I couldn't pay, about nights I went to bed hungry pretending I wasn't, about how one lucky break could literally change everything. And now I had something that looked like a map pointing to something real. So I went. I told myself I was just checking it out, nothing serious, just curiosity. Worst case, I wasted a few hours. Best case? I don't even know what I was hoping for. The place was on the edge of the city, industrial zone. Old factories, rusted fences, broken asphalt, the kind of area that feels like it was abandoned mid-story. Even getting close to it felt wrong. My phone signal dropped a little as I drove in. That stupid Civic of mine was rattling like it was protesting the whole trip. I remember gripping the wheel tighter than I needed to. When I finally parked, I just sat there for a minute, looking at the building. It was massive, but dead. No lights, no movement, just concrete walls covered in faded warning signs and graffiti that looked years old. And then I saw it. The same symbol. The one I saw on the back of the painting, painted near a side entrance. That's when my stomach dropped again. But this time, it wasn't curiosity. It was something closer to fear. Still, I got out. I walked up slowly, trying not to make noise even though there was nobody around. Every step echoed in my head like it was louder than it should be. The side door wasn't locked. That was the first thing that felt wrong. I pushed it open. Inside was darkness mixed with that stale, metallic smell of abandoned spaces. My flashlight barely cut through it at first, just dust floating in the beam. I stepped in anyway. And that's when I noticed something else. Footprints. Fresh ones. Not many, just enough to make it clear I wasn't the first person here recently. My heart started beating faster, but I kept going.
I followed the corridor deeper into the building, passing old machinery covered in plastic sheets like someone tried to preserve a ghost of what this place used to be. Then, I found the room. A large open space in the center of the building. And in that room, a table. Not old, not abandoned. Clean. Too clean. And on it, blueprints, maps, documents, spread out like someone was actively working there. I froze in the doorway, because this wasn't just random coordinates anymore. This was organized, planned, real. And I wasn't alone in this story anymore.
I didn't move for a solid few seconds. Just stood in that doorway, trying to process what I was seeing, like my brain could somehow load the situation differently if I waited long enough. But it didn't change. The table was real. The documents were real. The maps weren't some random junk either. They were layered, marked up, connected with colored strings like something out of a conspiracy documentary. And the worst part? It looked recent, like whoever set this up wasn't some ghost from the past. They were still active. My flashlight shook a little in my hand as I stepped closer. I kept telling myself, this is probably some urban explorers or weird hobbyists. Chill, don't jump to conclusions. But then I saw the same symbol again. Not just once, everywhere. Stamped on corners of documents, scribbled in margins, even etched into the metal leg of the table. That's when I noticed one of the maps. It wasn't just a map of the city, it was a layered grid of multiple cities overlapping, like the painting, like someone had taken different urban layouts and forced them into one system. And in the center of it all was a marked point labeled M17. My throat went dry, because I had seen that before, on the back of the painting. M17, Do Not Sell. I took a step back without even thinking. That's when I heard it. A sound. Not loud, just subtle. A metal click somewhere deeper in the building. I froze again. My brain went into full panic mode, like, all right, nope, you're done. Leave, right now. But my feet didn't move. Then I heard footsteps, slow, controlled, coming from the far end of the room. I quickly turned off my flashlight and stepped behind a stack of crates, holding my breath like that would somehow make me invisible. The footsteps got closer, then stopped. Silence. I swear I could hear my own heartbeat bouncing off the concrete walls. And then a voice. Calm, not aggressive, not surprised, just aware. You shouldn't have come here alone. My stomach dropped so hard it felt like it hit the floor. I didn't answer, didn't even breathe properly. The voice continued, closer now. We were wondering when that piece would resurface. My mind was racing. We? Resurface? Peace? That's when I made the worst mistake of the night. I shifted my weight, just slightly, a tiny sound of my shoe scraping concrete, and instantly a flashlight beam hit the crate right next to me, dead center. They knew exactly where I was hiding. And in that moment, I realized something that made my skin go cold. This wasn't me discovering something. This was something that had been waiting to be found.
The flashlight stayed locked on me. No movement, no rush, just steady light, like whoever was holding it already knew I wasn't going anywhere. I remember my first instinct wasn't to fight or run. It was just disbelief. Because the guy standing there didn't look like some movie villain or underground thief. He looked normal. Too normal. Hoodie, jeans, backpack. Like someone you'd pass in a coffee shop and forget instantly. But his eyes weren't normal. He wasn't scared of me being there. He was annoyed I showed up early. Okay, he said finally, lowering the flashlight just slightly. You're real. That sentence hit me weird, like I was the variable in his equation that wasn't supposed to exist. I stepped out slowly from behind the crates,
hands half raised without even thinking about it. "I didn't steal anything," I said immediately. My voice came out weaker than I wanted. I followed the coordinates." He nodded like that confirmed something. "Yeah," he muttered. "That's what we thought." Then he looked past me, toward the table full of maps. "You brought it with you." I hesitated. Then I realized there was no point lying. "Yeah." That's when he finally relaxed a little. Not fully, but enough to stop looking like he was about to call someone. "Good," he said. "Then you didn't ruin anything yet." That didn't make me feel better. I asked him straight up, "What is this? What is M17? He exhaled like he'd been waiting for that question a long time. Then he walked over to the table and tapped the center of the map. "M17 isn't a place, it's a lock." I stared at him. "A lock? To what?" He looked at me like I was asking the wrong question. "To what's been missing for decades." That's when he pointed at the painting in my head without even seeing it. "You didn't just find art," he said. "You found the last known Meridian fragment." My stomach twisted. "So that story online," I said slowly, "the Meridian works. It's real." He actually laughed. A short, tired laugh. "Real," he repeated. "No, not like people think. Not some genius artist hiding treasure maps in paintings for fun." He walked closer to me now, lowering his voice. "A system, a coded network, built into art pieces distributed before it got shut down." I blinked. Shut down by who? He paused, and that pause told me everything before he even said it. People who don't like things being found. The room felt colder suddenly. I looked back at the table, at the maps, at the symbol repeating everywhere like a signature. "This painting," I said, barely hearing my own voice. "This pointed me here?" He nodded. "That's the point," he said. "It doesn't just exist, it recruits." That word made my chest tighten. Recruit. Like I wasn't holding a painting anymore. Like I was holding an invitation. Then he looked at me directly. "And now that you're here," he said quietly, "you have two options." I swallowed hard. "What options?" He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he turned off the flashlight. And in the sudden darkness, I heard something I wasn't ready for. More footsteps. Behind me. I didn't even get a chance to turn around. That's the worst part about moments like that. Your brain knows something's wrong before your body can react. Footsteps behind me. Not fast, not chaotic, controlled. Like whoever it was already knew exactly how this would end. I stood there in the dark, barely breathing, trying to figure out if running would make things worse or just faster. Then a second flashlight clicked on. Then another, then another. Suddenly, the room wasn't dark anymore. It was sliced up by beams of light from at least 4 different directions. I was surrounded. The guy in the hoodie didn't move. He just looked at me like, "Yeah, this is what I meant." One of the new voices spoke, calm, older. "Did he bring it?" The hoodie guy nodded once. "Yeah, he did." My stomach dropped again. "What?" I finally said, my voice cracking more than I wanted it to. The older voice stepped forward just enough for me to see him. Same symbol stitched into his jacket. That's when it clicked in my head. This wasn't random explorers. This wasn't some underground art group. This was organized, structured, like a system that had been running long before I ever touched that painting. "You weren't supposed to find M17 alone," the man said. I almost laughed at that. Almost. "Yeah, I didn't exactly sign up for this. I bought a painting for $5 at a garage sale." That got a reaction. Not laughter, recognition. Like that detail mattered more than I understood. The older man walked closer to the table and pointed to the map. "M17 is not a location," he said again, slower this time. "It's a convergence point. If activated incorrectly, it collapses everything connected to the Meridian network." I blinked. That makes 0 sense. He nodded. It's not supposed to. Then he looked directly at me. And you just walked into the activation path with the final known fragment. My mouth went dry. So what, I'm supposed to fix it or something? I asked, half sarcastic, half terrified. The hoodie guy finally spoke again. Or you hand it over and walk away right now. Silence. That was the real choice. And for the first time since this whole nightmare started, I realized something simple. I wasn't the one in control of this story, but I was the only one who could decide what happens next. Because that painting in my apartment, the one I almost threw away, it wasn't just a discovery. It was a key. And now every person in that room was waiting to see what I'd do with it. I took a slow breath, looked at the symbol, then at the map, then at them, and I said the only thing I could think of. What happens if I don't give it to you? Nobody answered right away. Instead, all the flashlights slowly shifted towards me, and in that moment, I realized the truth I was never supposed to figure out. Whatever I bought for $5 was never meant to be owned by someone like me. It was meant to be found. And now, there was no going back.
Before you go, hit that like button and subscribe for more unbelievable stories just like this one. See you in the next story.